Welcome to Luthier's Tips, Tricks and Training with Crimson Guitars. I'm Ben Crow and this video is brought to you by Insanity. Here is the pewter guitar that I've been working on. I thought it would be fun and had wanted to do this for decades to pour molten metal into knot holes, etc. It wasn't fun, but it was effective. Burn it. I then realized that I needed to replace the missing bark and made a mold and did that. If you have not watched that video, please check it out. At this stage, I am 2 coats into a guitar finishing oil finish. This is the Crimson Guitars guitar finishing oil, which, as you can see, with this way of applying it, a sealant coat of shellac and then high build guitar finishing oil on the top, applied with 1200, then 1500, and eventually to 2500 grit wet and dry paper that burnishes the surface, fills grain to a certain extent, and you can get almost a high gloss finish, which is very, very interesting for a small workshop. You cannot do that over a stained top or something like that. Some of the stain will be lifted both through the solvents in the guitar finishing oil to a certain extent, but mainly through the abrasive action of the wet and dry paper. You have been warned. At this stage though, I need to glue the neck in, and of course I've been throwing guitar finishing oil all over the place willy-nilly, so I need to clean out, just to make sure that this neck doesn't fall off in 5 years' time. I need to clean this joint out and glue the neck in. The first stage is to gently scrape away using a chisel. Now I was relatively careful and I did not get very much oil in the main areas, but some of it has seeped around the edges, and we just want to be absolutely sure. And then go in with 240 grit sandpaper to remove anything on the surface. I do not want to change the nature, the shape of the joint too much though, so be careful, don't remove very much material, be flat, nice, just be cool. Be cool. Once I'm happy with that, a little bit of sanding. I don't go any higher than 240 grit. You do not want glass smooth surfaces when you are using wood glue. That burnishes things down and actually acts as a barrier between the two gluing surfaces, which is, yeah, the antithesis of what you are after. It is possible to use solvents to strip waxes and minerals out of at least the surface layer of the timber that you are gluing up. This is fraught with several possible pitfalls. One is that the solvent tends to or can stay in the joint and weaken the joint. So you need to be very sparing. You also need to choose the correct solvent. I use isopropyl alcohol or denatured alcohol, and I do not flood everything with the alcohol. I'm going to apply the isopropyl alcohol to my rag very sparingly, go in dry, clean up just the very surface, and then I want to leave it for 10, 20, 30 minutes to off gas. We've removed the surface layer of wax, which in this case is something that I've put on the surface. It's not integral to the wood. It is not the nature of the wood. It's the nature of the builder to make his life more difficult, damn it. I'm going to let the isopropyl alcohol off gas and then carry on. I don't want just a handful of tissue. I'm folding it nicely so I've got a tool so I know where it's going to go. Denatured alcohol. Don't spill it on your finish. It's not very wet. In fact, I'm just going to let that go for a second. Normally, I would be applying finish once the neck was glued in. In this case, it was all experimental, so I didn't know where we were going. Pulling from the inside to the edge is safer. If you go in the other direction, you can pull, in this case, alcohol out of the rag and squeeze it down the edge of the instrument, which we wouldn't want. Now I am going, after the neck has been glued in, I'm going to be applying more guitar finishing oil and more finish. So I don't have to be too careful, but I haven't quite fully internalized the concept of not making things harder for yourself. I'm going to let this alcohol off gas and clear away for a minimum of 10 minutes before I move on. The isopropyl alcohol is all out of the surface, and I'm going to go in with a fresh piece of sandpaper so that I'm not transferring any oils that I ripped off physically before. Now, the original plan was to burn the neck, but this is beautiful, and it's actually a very nice contrast to the Suzuki barn on the body. I am going to mess around with the inlays, of course. So at this stage, with the neck fine sanded and good to go, I am going to glue this neck in and be done with it. We still have a nice tight joint. Yeah. The first time you actually see a guitar becoming a guitar with the neck on, that it's always exciting. We use a clamping caul with cork down either side to put pressure on the edges. Now I've got a big piece of sycamore that I'm going to use behind the body to spread the weight. I want to take the edges down just a little bit with this crimson sanding stick, and we're good to go. Thought there was glue. It's a piece of pewter. Some things are just better done with your fingers. I don't want too much glue near the edge. I do need some. Using some tissue and a little bit of water before I apply the clamps, just going to go and remove any initial squeeze out, and well, there almost wasn't any. You do not need huge amounts of pressure. This is something that a lot of people worry about, and they apply too much pressure. If you are physically feeling like you are working out when tightening clamps up, there's something wrong. You can starve the joint. You can actually push too much of the glue into the wood, away from things, all the way out. You can damage the instrument. It's not required. If it feels like work, you're doing something wrong. There we go. And we have more squeeze out. So you can see that there is pressure, and it's enough pressure. I do prefer trying to physically remove the glue before you wipe it away with the tissue, because in that case you're not actually spreading it around. You're not spreading very much of it around. So I can see that the joint is good. There's what looks like a tiny little gap on the edge, But that is what happens when you burn a guitar. The edges tend to degrade a little bit. This is, in this case, all that's required. When I first started building guitars on video, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago, talking to people while doing a glue up was one of the scariest, most stressful parts of my day. Now I forget I'm doing it. Anyway, I'll catch you when all of this is cured. Have fun. Let's get these clamps off then, shall we? I love the juxtaposition of absolutely messed up burnt wood and perfect, lovely timber. But, of course, when we started making this guitar, the plan was not to fill all of the holes with molten pewter. It was to make something a little bit more raw and standard. And these inlays no longer fit. I've also just realized on camera that I probably should have ripped these side dots out before gluing it up. Let's get these inlays out and replace them with a mixture of pewter, swarf and resin. Come on then. And yes, I know the frets are in, it doesn't matter. I'm using a very sharp awl to mark roughly in the center of each of these dots. This is a clay analog. And then one of these, this is just the little crimson tool holder with a small drill bit in it. Just to center it up a little bit better. I'm going to put the drill bit in reverse. I do not want the cutting edge to grab the inlay. I'm paying attention to where it's cutting. It's slightly off center, but I've got a smaller bit. I'm not going directly in at 6 millimeters or 1/4 inch. Now I'm creating both friction. You can see I'm actually way off center, but I'm not outside the edge of what I want, which is, and as I go through to the bottom of the inlay, I should feel the difference. Wow, these are quite thick. There we go. And now I've got a very, very thin wall that is also fairly weak. Obviously, I haven't had quite enough coffee today. I've got my own roast. Get it at crimsonguitars.com. So the drill grabbed and did exactly what I didn't want it to do because I was thinking about coffee. When you teach online, actually, a lot of people struggle because they know what they're doing. They don't necessarily realize that what they're doing is not obvious to everybody else. I'm not sure if you noticed, maybe Bear, the editor, can put this back in or flip this up here, but when I started drilling that second time, I had my mouth on the drill. I was physically feeling where the drill was going, what it was doing through my face. Now that's guitar building for you. And at that point, well, I've got where I want to go. Still in reverse. The walls were turned to powder. and any that weren't, any very thin segments, should just fall away from the edges of the hole. I'm going to go a little bit deeper. You can go in with a scalpel or something and clean it up as necessary. And there we go. And now I've got a few more to do. Now this particular dot threw up an issue, and it's a chance to learn. As I opened out the hole, one of the sides fell apart, completely delaminated, giving me an irregular circle, meaning that I couldn't widen it out and stay centered. And of course, my phone goes. And of course, I need to now use a rotary tool. So you can see that I have an edge there, but it fell apart on this side. And well, that is to be expected. So I'm going in with a rotary tool and a circular burr. Undercutting it like that, I'm hoping that I'll just be able to scrape away the excess. I don't really want to change the circularity of things. And this is I think it's called a bird cage awl, so it has very sharp edges. It's a multi-purpose tool. There we go. There are always a multitude of tools that can do a job. In this case, the best tool for the job actually is an inside ground gouge. And what we've got here is a gouge where the bevel is ground on the inside of the curve, allowing me to follow the edge, and it almost matches up, of the inlay. And I'm actually going to use this to clean up all of the other ones as well. We generally use these when the router bearing or diameter of the router isn't quite enough for the sharp corners of a pickup. And I'm just going to walk it around the edge. I'll do it from the other side so you can see, hopefully. Oh yeah, blood blister, that's what happens when you're doing upholstery using a hammer, where the striking face is about 5 millimeters across, and it slips off a handmade tack. That has actually given me a far better and more perfect edge, matching the original hole, than drilling all the way out. So I'm going to potentially adjust my technique now and use this tool as my final stage. I now have the canvas into which I can work. So I'm going to use some two-part polyurethane epoxy resin, very quick curing stuff. You've probably seen me use it on the channel before to make these inlays, using what was left of the pewter shavings. It's a 1-to-1 mix, and I really don't need very much. Okay, that will do. And I have a few minutes to get this mixed. I could have put a wax resist around the outside edge, but I'm going to be filing down in any case. I'm just going to be making a mess, and I'm not worried about cleaning it up. It'll be okay. This is already starting to cure. I am going to be leaving it overnight to get to full hardness, and then we'll see what we've got. Now, whenever you're mixing resin and doing this sort of thing, it's a wise thing to have a mold that you aren't really planning on using, but into which you can pour your excess resin. You might as well make something with your materials. And I have been wondering what I was going to do about the logo. A logo carved out of the same pewter mix. I want it to be strong, so I'm going to burnish on some veneer onto the back to act as a support. That works very well as a burnisher, and isn't what I was reaching for, but will do nicely. This is a section of mold used earlier in the build to make the bark. Should be fun. I've made a mess. We're a few minutes in and it's already starting to cure. In fact, it's already almost cured. I'm going to use a chisel to try and remove the worst of the mess. I'm running the chisel along the surface of the fretboard. If you do this too soon, you run the risk of ripping the whole mess out of the hole into which you've just tried to get it in. And if you do it too late, well, it just gets progressively harder and harder until it doesn't work anymore. It looks a bit alright, doesn't it? Now, it's the right texture, but it does not look very nice yet. 12 hours later, and this is all nice and cured and hard. I'm using one of the premium traditional crowning files from Crimson. Ooh, that's a prototype. The safe edges of the crowning file mean I'm just not going to damage my frets at all. nice and easy. And moving on, a fret polishing rubber, which is actually a fret and fretboard polishing rubber. The abrasives in these are so fine that yes, technically you are leaving scratches on the fretboard, but they're micro scratches. So go like so, and along the grain. That was the medium, and the fine. Don't even need the super fine, and we're there. Now we want the fretboard to match even in the gaps where there aren't any dots. So before the day is done, I'll go through and do the entire fretboard with the same abrasive, just to make sure. I tend to polish my frets for the most part with machines rather than the fret rubbers. I use the fret rubbers on everything else, actually. And as you can see on this surface, I'm going across the grain. I haven't actually gone with the grain at all with any of these, and you can't see any scratch marks. If you have a particularly dirty fretboard, you know, physical crap that's built up over the years, this is a good first attempt or first pass at cleaning it up. On we go to the fretboard and finish cleaner, and essentially I don't want to oil this. Ooh, I'm running out. I don't want to oil this fretboard because I'm going to be putting tape on, etc., while I do the fretwork later. Using fretboard and finish cleaner, or even a relatively dry application of water on raw wood at this stage in the finishing process, is, in my mind, pretty much essential if you want to get a perfect finish. What it does is it raises the grain. We don't like adding water to wood, but used sparingly, it off-gases, goes out very, very rapidly, raises the grain a little bit. You can then go back with the final fret rubber or sandpaper that you're using, and that grain should never raise again, especially on something like ebony. You may need 1 or 2 applications on softer woods, but in the end you'll have a perfectly flat substrate that will always be perfectly flat. If you don't do this, as your client or yourself, if you're building yourself a guitar, plays it and sweats and all of that jazz, the grain will raise and the fretboard will not feel as smooth. Once it's dried, which is almost immediate, go over with the fret rubber again. This is much coarser. Well, under the oil finish, this is going to be absolutely incredible. This guitar is coming together, and yeah, I'm very excited. The little bit of bark that we made the other day, there's not quite enough pewter in the surface level to make it as sparkly as I want. I'm going to potentially play with that next week. We are going to be doing the side dots and starting to play with customizing hardware. Thank you for watching. Click like, subscribe if you have not done so. Share this with all of your friends. Please, it all helps. And yeah, pop back for more videos. There are going to be some interstitial videos based on this guitar, but focused on individual bits and pieces, as well as completely unrelated tutorials and things. I'm having fun. Thanks for watching. I'm going to stop talking now. Goodbye. Go make a guitar.